We need to go into those kind of periods a lot more to understand what we're seeing today. Because, I mean, like I said, there's nothing new in the trade union movement that we haven't seen in the last 100 years in a lot of ways. The next speaker, listen, I'm really happy to get Arnie back into the public political realm and speaking. Listen, Arnie and I have a lot of differences. We don't come from the same political camps. He comes from the, if you don't mind me saying, I'm not saying you're still there, but you come from the Trotskyite SWP camp, and I really don't. Right? but when I saw Arnie and London Black Revs, circa 2013 it must have been, when they did the homeless spikes action, I mean, it was really touching. It really brought tears to my eyes, actually, and it still really is very emotive when I share. It was like these young black and brown youth, must be in their early 20s, militant, audacious, excellent, agitational propaganda, a radical grassroots movement. And then I saw Arnie and a few of his other comrades he may have fallen out with or still working together, whatever, this organisation with the ability to organise militant street protests of thousands of young working class youth. If you go back to the documentary footage of what the protest in Brixton, I mean, audaciously trying to occupy Brixton police station, the shutdown of Westfield Shopping Centre in Shepherd's Bush, just action after action. It was just so inspiring. The leadership was fearless. The contribution was so inspiring. It really laid the basis for the militancy of what became the Black Lives Matter movement, which in no way has no comparison at all. So I'm really happy Arnie's back and talking and active in public. So warm welcome, Arnie from London Black Revs. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with saying, look at what's happening across the world. People are fighting back in other countries. If it's happening in Africa, in Latin America, in the Middle East, what's happening here? Where has the militancy gone? I think that's the main question we need to ask ourselves. The dilution of militancy in this country over the last 10 years has probably been the biggest threat to the organised left and to working class people who are suffering. They're suffering from their energy bills, electric bills going up 400–500% within 12 months, their gas bills going up. Everything is going up. And it's just been over 10 years since the riots across London, across the country, where people burned down their communities and came out on the streets in anger at the shooting of a young black man. But what has happened in that time, I think, has been an interesting story. We were supposed to lay the roots down in these communities because from the generations of the 70s and the 80s and the defeat from Thatcher, where trade unions, from my perspective, closed their hatches and sort of had to batten down and defend themselves from being expelled or kicked out of the unions. Our generation was the generation of the student strikes, of the tripling of tuition fees, of the scrapping of EMA, where tens of thousands of children came out onto the streets in central London to make their voices heard. A generation of people who are politicised, but with no real direction and nowhere to go. And the left said to themselves at the time, we will do better. We will lay down those roots. We will put the education there for the young generation, for the mentors to come out and to help caterise these young people, to introduce them to a political tradition that they do not know that exists, whether that's whether that's trade unionism, whether that's getting a 0-hour contract job in some kind of restaurant in central London with no protections, whether that's going into the public sector, whether that's you're just unemployed. Delivery work, the gig economy. There's been a deep down in people's hearts, there's a real desire to fight back, but it's covered in a shroud of demobilisation because the left and organised working class people and left-wing groups have either been busy either tearing themselves apart, fighting inwards, or being battered by the state, the police and the Conservative Party. 10 years since the Tottenham riots, just over 10 years. And if we have an analysis of the state today, it's worse now than it was 10 years ago. There aren't real strong communities where places have organisation, where communities have meetings. They're so fragmented and all over the place. But that being said, while that isn't a brief analysis of what was before, there still exists a chance and a desire and a passion and a militancy to fight back today. Our working conditions are getting worse, our living conditions are getting worse. People do want to stand up and rise up and fight back, but the vessels at which they can join and organise do not exist in a very strong form, whether that's local community bodies, trade unions. Okay, I think trade unions are probably in some better shape than other organisations at the moment, but for the majority of people, they're just on their own. And so I think it really points to the reason why we need a united front, a united campaign of all different organisations to come together to address the problems that the left is facing and the attacks the left is facing, and to start mobilising and to realise that the past 10 years has mainly been a result of either compromise, dilution of militancy, or attack on those organisations. So I would say that's, in short, that's a brief analysis of what's happening today. In relation to the meeting, I think what's interesting is that a lot of Black and Asian people are in the jobs that are most precarious in London, maybe throughout the country, and disproportionately are going to be affected by Rishi Sunak's austerity measures that are going to be coming in next year extremely hard. And those are potentially the people who are going to lose their jobs first. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And it really points to the need to have examples where we can lionise those examples, whether it's the Royal Mail having so many days of strikes in October, November, December this year, or other unions that are fighting, and people inside the unions that are fighting to have strikes, is that we point to those examples to other people, to people in less organised positions and less strengthened positions, and say to them, this could be you. You could be in a union. You could be fighting on a picket line or joining a picket line. That's on a sort of more organised basis. But none of this is happening, and I think it's our responsibility, no matter how small we are, no matter how tired we are, as revolutionaries, that we have to continue this work in whatever form we can do, and we need to do it with open minds, open to forming new alliances, open to forming old alliances, calling on people from the past, patching and resolving differences, but also looking for new ideas and fresh minds to join that. There are thousands of people who are coming in to try to resist what's happening, but their only outlets are Instagram, are Facebook, are social media, because they know no better. They do not know the potential organisations, bodies or vessels, and they do not know the history that Dan talks about, which is really important. And we have to continue to tell the history, because even I don't know all the history, and no one does know all the history, but those examples point to where the working class has had victories, whether it's in Britain or India or across the world. Resistance is possible, no matter how bleak it seems in the UK. Our population seems to be under this mysterious cloud of depression where no one does anything and everyone rolls over, no matter what government taxes are introduced or the councils putting their council tax up. In a never-ending list of things that are stipulated upon working class people in this country, but we don't have the same reactions as other people. I think sometimes it requires a mindset that says we have nothing to lose. It's a famous quote. It says we have nothing to lose but our chains. And I think if we start to think in that way and start to spread that message, then more people will be willing to stand up. Some examples of potential initiatives or campaigns that could spiral are the campaigns where you refuse to pay your energy bills. Now that, in an isolated, individualistic sense, will probably get you in trouble. But that, on the scale of something that happened, for example, with the poll tax, where everyone refuses to pay their bills, is a different story. In order for that to be organised, we need much stronger united campaigns that we currently have. But we need different organisations talking to each other. We need the unions on board, we need the schools on board, we need everyone on board. And that's just an example of how we can turn a small idea into something that is much bigger. We need real examples of things we could win in order to give people the enthusiasm to say, we can put our foot in the ground and we're not taking this anymore. Because the consequences of not trying to fight what happens in the next few years, with rising inflation, with the weakening pound, with austerity, is terrifying. I think people don't truly understand the economics that are going to be put in place that favour the international markets at the sacrifice of everyone else. So I'll sum up with, we have nothing to lose but our chains, and I think this is a really good opportunity to think about the last few years have been quite difficult for people. A pandemic, a very long lockdown, some people have still returned to their full strength, and it's an opportunity to continue to come to meetings